Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Magsisimula sa tinatawag nating mga truism, mga one-liner. May katotohanan, pero meron ding kakulangan sa totoo. Ang una ito, alam nating lahat ito. Anger is powerful. I think every one of us knows this. When we are angry, all of a sudden we have the power to lift up heavy objects. When we are angry, we are able to do things that otherwise we won't be able to if we were at peace. Anger is powerful. Second truism, even in American English, they talk about revenge as something sweet. Taking sweet revenge. Revenge sounds sweet. I didn't use the word is, but revenge does sound sweet. But then number three truism that I think you will all agree is that both anger and revenge in the end. Anger consumes you. Revenge hurts you more than you're able to hurt the person you're taking vengeance at. In the first reading, we heard about the opportunity of a lifetime for David to harm the one who was persecuting him, Saul. They set out in search for David to kill him. And he had the chance one night when they all fell into deep slumber. David had it against Saul, you know that. David had the chance to take sweet revenge. But in the end, contrary to the suggestion of Abishai, David chose to follow God's leading and knew in his heart that it was not up to him to harm the Lord's anointed. Sa pangalawang pagbasa, binigyan ng diin ni San Pablo ang dalawang mukha natin bilang tao, dalawang kalikasan, two natures that are at loggerheads with each other. On the one hand, we have the natural man, and on the other hand, you have the spiritual man. Katumbaso ng natural man ang being earthly, makamundo, at katumbas ng spiritual man, or woman for that matter, is the heavenly one. The katumbas po ng una, natural, earthly, is the image of Adam. Pero katumbas ng ikalawa, spiritual and heavenly, is the image of Christ. I would like to tell you point blank, the gospel today is the kernel of the Christian good news. Why? Because it talks about the greatest of all three virtues. It talks about love. It talks about forgiveness. It talks about mercy. Our response to the first reading is the real foundation why this is the kernel of the Lord's teaching, because we answer, the Lord is kind and merciful. And this is the only reason why we should be loving and compassionate and forgiving and merciful. They are all very difficult things to do. I have it on the authority of a certain Steve McDonald. He was a policeman in New York City, and once he was doing the rounds in Central Park, a teenager shot him for no reason at all, because guns are very easy to get in the United States. Everybody, apparently, almost like everybody seems to have a gun. He was shot by a teenager in Central Park, and he was paralyzed. in his early years, in his early 20s, shot by a senseless teenager who had nothing better to do. He was paralyzed for the rest of his life. But then he chose to forgive the young man. And when asked why, this is what he wrote, what he said: "I forgave him because I believe the only thing worse than receiving a bullet in my spine would have been to nurture revenge in my heart." How heroic, how unnatural. But this is exactly what being spiritual is all about. It's about not following the natural man with our natural urges, with our natural tendencies, because we know all too well that our tendency, if you are hit on one cheek, then you smack him in the face, and you do worse. But the Lord tells us, if somebody slaps you on one cheek, then offer the other one as well. It is of course hyperbolical. It is an exaggerated manner of speech, but it drives home the point. And the point is that revenge is not up to any one of us. Today's gospel, like I said, is the kernel of good news, the heart of the ethical teachings of the Lord. And all three readings point to one reality that we need to accept. Forgiving is hard. Forgiving is unnatural. Forgiving is difficult, but it is life-changing. It can lead you to tears, but those tears are never enslaving, but on the other hand, liberating. There was a story about a woman who was baking bread every morning. And he would bake bread for his family, for her family, for her sons and daughters, for her children, for neighbors. And she would always bake an extra one to put on the windowsill so that anyone who needs it might get it. And every morning there was a hunchback man who would take that bread. And as he took that bread, he would always mutter, "The evil that you do remains with you. The good that you do comes back to you." Every morning, that hunchback would take the bread, saying nothing more than this: "The evil that you do remains after you, the good that you do comes back to you." And after so many months of not hearing a thank you, of not hearing a word of appreciation, but muttering these words, the woman devised a scheme. And one day she put poison on that one bread that she put on the sill as usual. The hunchback came, but then at the last minute the woman thought better, and she threw that bread into the fire and put out a fresh loaf that was clean as those she was giving to everybody she loved. The man took the bread, but then her son, after a few days, came unexpectedly from a faraway journey, trying to find work someplace else. And when he came back, he was skin and bones. This woman could not recognize anymore her oldest son. And then she asked him, "How come you were able to come home, bring yourself here, drag yourself here home?" And her son told him the story. "I was close to dying, but then when I fell down on the street entering the city, there was a hunchback man who helped him and told him, 'You're very hungry, you need help more than I do. And therefore this is the only thing I have, a loaf of bread, the only thing that I have lived on for months and months in the past. but you need it now more than I do. Here you go.